The CEO turned to me and he goes, "Is this what business is? Because if it is, I think I finally understand it, and it seems kind of fun."
Have you ever felt like pursuing your passion means sacrificing financial success? Too many creative entrepreneurs believe they have to choose between doing what they love and building a profitable business. Today on the Mitlin Money Mindset, I'm joined by Pape, TEDx speaker, author, creative entrepreneur, and the man known as Santa for Nerds. After more than 30 years in the arts, including creating experiences for Disney, Universal, and Nickelodeon, Paul has made it his mission to help creatives rewrite the rules of business. Through his innovative Gamify Business framework, he's proving that creativity and profitability aren't opposing forces. They are powerful allies. If you're ready to level up your mindset, your business, and your life, this conversation is an adventure you won't want to miss. I'm Larry Sprung, your host for the Mitlin Money Mindset and founder and wealth advisor of Mitlin Financial. Let's dive into the show. Super excited today to have Pape with us, creator of Gamify Business. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I am so excited for this conversation. We cater to a lot of creatives, so they're going to be super interested in what you have to say. But before we jump in and talk about what you're doing today with Gamify Business, can you share with our listeners a bit about your journey, how you moved into or towards being an entrepreneur? Because they always find that journey so fascinating.
Yeah. Well, I know a lot of people's journey is kind of a straight line or at least a bumpy road. Mine looks more like a spilled plate of spaghetti. I've been kind of everywhere doing everything. So I started off in theater, and my original first gig was actor. And I was told pretty much right off the bat, that's not going to be a thing for me. I'm really good on stage, but I'm really bad at memorizing lines. So I'm the worst scene partner. So basically from there, I went and jumped into design, and I got into scenic design and properties design. And that's where my degrees are in. And I was doing that, and I went through grad school, won some really nice awards with that. And I was working on a project, and I was talking to another scenic designer who I was assisting him. And he was pretty much what we'd call the apex of scenic design in America. He had 4 or 5 shows on Broadway. He was really successful. And I was asking him, how is it? Because I just got my degree in this. Is what I'm going to go do with the rest of my life. And he goes, "Yeah, it sucks. Don't do it." So I was like, "Oh, okay, cool. Wish you would have told me that 3 years ago before I got this degree." But all right. So from there, I started my first business. I invented a product. I was working on that design at the same time I was working with him. I was actually hand cutting a bunch of tiny furniture because that's what scenic designers do. We make little tiny models of everything, and I had to cut out 100 chairs. It was bad. And so I actually was sitting at the grocery store looking through greeting cards for Mother's Day, and I noticed these laser etched cards. And I was like, I wonder if I could do that with furniture. So my first product was called Pop Out Furniture. Oh. And it was laser die cut furniture for designers and architects. And
we use Love Pop cards all the time for the families we serve. So I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah.
Excellent. And so I did that one for a while until I was sitting in a booth at a trade show, and the person who had the booth next to me was selling at-home lasers. And I was like, well, there's the writing on the wall. So this business is going to go away. Because before then, the laser I used took up a warehouse in Jersey. Wow. So it was like a huge thing. And so I was like, okay. So then I kind of, I took a 3-year stint as a college professor teaching design and for theater. And I just didn't like the bureaucracy of it. But I got a great opportunity during my last year there. One of the students had asked me to sculpt him a figurine of, I don't know if you remember the Nintendo Wii back in the 2005, 2006, little avatars they had there called Miis. He's like, can you make me one of me and my girlfriend? I'm like, yeah, sure. Let me, as a gift or whatever. And so I did that. And what I didn't know is he had actually sent it off to a blog, because this is early 2000s before everybody had Facebook and all that fun stuff. And there's a blog called Super Punch. And what I didn't know is they put my name and my contact information in the thing. And I started getting inundated with all of these people asking me to make theirs. And so I started making, as a side gig, more money than I was teaching college. And so I asked my wife, hey, can I stop teaching college and actually try and do this design art thing for a living? And she said, I'll give you 1 year to try it. And if you don't, then go get a real job. And then I made $50,000 the second month I was out. Kind of the rest is history. So I did that for 20 years. I'm still doing it. It's my other job. And then about 6-7 years ago, I started working on a platform called Twitch. I was doing live. Instead of gaming, I was actually an artist. And so 4 or 5 days a week for about 4 to 6 hours a day, I would sculpt and do my design work while talking on camera. And from there, I started teaching a lot of other creatives how to be a business. Because one thing I recognize being a college professor, being a student, is that they teach you all the things to have the skills, but they don't teach you how to be a business.
Right.
And we all kind of have to figure that out. And everyone leaves college with a degree and go get it attitude, and they just kind of have to figure it out. And so I was helping all these people on Twitch. And what I realized pretty much right off the bat is that none of them understand business. They didn't understand it at all. Just like right over their head. It was boring. They didn't want to do it, blah, blah, blah. And so I was working with a client who was struggling with this exact same thing. They were very creative based. And, but they were big gaming nerds. I'm a big gaming nerd myself. And so I was sitting there talking to them, and I was like, what does everybody do in this business? And they're like, we all kind of do everything. I'm like, well, that's the best way to ruin a business. So tell me like specifically what you guys do. And so they told me, and I said, how about this? How about tomorrow I come back and just playing it off the top of the dome here? I was like, let me do like Dungeons and Dragons Business Edition. And instead of playing like a warrior or a wizard, you're going to play your role in your business. And instead of fighting imps and dragons, we're going to fight issues that you're going to come up against in business. So I did. We came back and just kind of playing it off the cuff, and we played for about 4 to 6 hours. And at the end of that, CEO turned to me and he goes, is this what business is? Because if it is, I think I finally understand it. And it seems kind of fun. And I'm like, yes, this is what it is. And that was really the impetus for Gamify Business, which is now my consulting business, where I actually take your business and I gamify it so that we give quests and we give rewards, because it's a big part of questing. I play the barkeep and the game master, and I just kind of come in and I act as a consultant, but I translate business into a language that they understand and seems fun.
Yeah.
And that's where I'm at.
What a great journey. And yeah, I agree with you. We work with a lot of creatives, tend to be authors, and, they're really great at writing and being New York Times bestsellers, et cetera. But at the same time, sometimes it's a bit of a challenge, especially some of them don't go into it from the start as a business. They write something because they have a passion for it. It takes off. And then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I can make money doing this, but then we need to educate them on the business end of things. So
absolutely,
right on. You found something you loved and you leaned into it. So what a great story. I guess I do have one question. You didn't mention this, but my understanding is you've gained the nickname Santa for Nerds. How did you end up getting that nickname?
So my business, my art business is called Pape Designs. It's a design and fabrication studio. And for years, it's a completely bespoke business. I don't sell a product. I sell the idea that whatever you want, I can make it. And I've been doing that for 20 years, but the custom business is a very difficult one to nail down when you're at a trade show or you're introducing yourself in an elevator. They're like, what do you do? Well, I make anything that you want. And so I've tried everything over the years. Literally had a banner at a trade show booth that said, I can make you anything you want. All you have to do is ask. And nobody would take me up on it. And so it was very difficult. And I was working with a client at one point because I'm making a lot of nerdy stuff. And she goes, you're just kind of like Santa for nerds. And I'm like, dude, that's the business card right there. And so I really embraced that because everybody knows what Santa is. Everybody knows what nerds are. But when you say Santa for nerds, people are like, I'm going to ask a follow-up question. And that's really where that came from. And it's actually the title of my TEDx, my first one.
I was going to say, you took that identity and you turned it into a TEDx. How did you shift from, taking on that moniker and turning that memorable identity into that TED Talk?
Now, believe it or not, this is a funny story. When I applied for the TEDx, this was not the speech that I applied for. I applied for one about creativity and imagination. And we got all the way up until the week before the actual TEDx presentation. And then the people who ran it came to me and they said, we love your speech and you can do it, but we'd really rather you do one about Santa for Nerds. Because there is, anybody can talk about imagination and creativity, but nobody can talk about being Santa for Nerds. So we would love it if you would change your speech a week before we do this and actually do one about Santa for Nerds. I'm like, let's roll with it. Let's see what happens. And so, I kind of threw it together, threw some props in there, because I make a lot of things. So I brought something. They really love the visual aspect of it. And I work with big companies like Disney, Universal, and Nickelodeon, those kind of places. So they're like, hey, can you bring some of those and like really entice people? And so I was like, sure. But the whole crux of my business, it centers around the emotional response to a memory. So the things that I make, my wife says I make memories tangible. So that was really the stories that I brought to it. And what I've found, it's a theater background as well, is that the stories of people's lives are way more interesting than the things that you show them. Right. And so that's really where that came from. And so once that hit, and let me tell you, using the term Santa for nerds, I get a lot of pushback on that, especially from professionals. They're like, you're not taking yourself seriously. And I'm like, and I shouldn't. No, I'm a guy who plays all day long, so I don't take myself seriously. But right. I think it's really an interesting way to stand out, which is really what creatives want to do in the first place. We've got to stand out amongst the crowd of everyone else doing the same thing.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes having those little monikers, just like break the ice, get somebody talking. I used to share with people because, being in the financial space, the last thing you want to tell somebody is, oh, I'm a financial advisor. Their eyes glaze over, roll back in their head, and they're looking for their next drink or hors d'oeuvre. There have been times where I've been in, sticky situations with somebody, maybe a little uncomfortable, and they'll be like, oh, what do you do? And I'm like, well, I work with seniors and make sure that they don't have to go to the golden arches during their golden years. And it's like, what? It takes them off guard, and it gets a laugh, it gets a conversation going. So those are super helpful. Yeah. One of the things you just mentioned is, you work with companies like Disney and Nickelodeon. What is working with companies like those, taught you over, your career?
There are too many cooks in the kitchen. That's really what it's taught me. The collaboration aspect of it is wonderful. And I love that they have, I've built a reputation of being the guy you come to when everyone else can't do it. And that's what I really love about it. When I work with companies like The Tonight Show, it's very immediate. Like they call me up. They're like, we need it in 24, 48 hours. And it's never anything simple. It's always this really weird thing. And working with those people, one, if they work with me long enough, they give me a lot of grace and they just say, we have this idea. Can it happen? Yes. Okay. Let's just make it work. And so that's nice. But working with companies like Disney and Universal, you are a tiny, tiny, tiny cog in a giant machine. And what you don't understand is that the bigger cogs are moving all the little ones. And so there's a lot of collaboration going on. There's a lot, like I just got hired yesterday, or they finally hired me, and it's taken 6 months of negotiation, prodding, poking to get all the wheels moving to the point that they're like, okay, let's go. But of course, their deadline never changes. So it's like my workload just gets compacted and compacted. And so that's really what you learn working with these companies. The one myth I like to dispel is like Bob Disney is not calling me up. He's like, Paul, we've got a Disney emergency. It's not that at all. It's always a company hiring a company hiring me. And that's how all of these work. So the myth is, that when you work for Disney, you're in Disney World or Disneyland, you're working with Imagineers. It's not the case. It's, you're working tertiarily through some other company.
Yeah. You have a few layers of cushion in between you and the end client, I guess, so to speak. Exactly. So let's dive into what you're doing today and really what you've done your whole career. I think entrepreneurs, and I think regardless of whatever business you're in, there has to be a level of creativity, right? Involved there. And, you've shared some of those examples along the way in your career. Why do you feel creativity is so powerful for entrepreneurs to, think about and implement?
Well, I mean, this is funny enough, what my second TEDx, which is coming out in October, is all about. And it's that creatives are the soul of humanity. And it seems like a really lofty thing to say, but the reality is the things that make us feel human or make us feel like ourselves are all created by creative people. So everything from the glasses on our face, the pens that we write with, the chairs, the cars, the food, everything is made by a creative. And as entrepreneurs, we are all creatives. Now, I always make the distinction that every artist is a creative, but not every creative is an artist. And so like you are creative, and it might be in financials. It may not be on painting. And so we have to understand humans, that's what separates humans from animals, is that we have the ability to create things from our imagination and then implement it. And so that's the awesome thing about it. So when I'm working with creatives, you've got to stay constantly fluid in how the rules are laid out. And that's what I really love about working with them, because everybody comes from, it's their accumulation of their life experiences into the product that they're producing. And so I have to step in typically as a consultant and look at things from their perspective, really understand where they're coming from to help them move that product forward and appeal to a client that's out there, so that they're not just making things for themselves. And so that's always been the interesting aspect of it that I really enjoy. everybody is creative, and to really just, find out what that spark is and really latch onto it and help them understand that that's the thing that makes them stand apart from everyone else.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I mean, do you think that there's, and I don't know that there's any kind of social proof or financial proof behind this, but do you feel like there's financial gains to be had for entrepreneurs who tend to be more creative than those who are not?
Absolutely. Creatives are rule benders or rule breakers.
Right.
And, we think about the people who have innovated humanity over the last 20, 30, 50 years. It's always the people who are pushing the edge. And those people are always going to be super creative. I mean, we look at our last 5 presidents, and they've been all left-handed, creative, thinking outside the box kind of people. It's like these types of people are the ones that really help push humanity forward into the future here. And so absolutely, they're going to be the ones, Steve Jobs is a great example of this. He's like, we're all using Blackberries and flip phones. And he's like, how about we put a tiny computer in your pocket? Mm-hmm. It's like, that's ridiculous. And then here we are. Let's come out with something called an iPad. I just remember when that thing came out, everybody was mocking the name forever. And now every child has one in school. It's like ridiculous. So it's that creativity is really what drives innovation. And, and everybody has that FOMO, their fear of missing. And so like, that's why I'm wearing an Apple Watch or I carry an iPhone or whatever. It's like, I don't want to miss out on this new great tech. And that's what really drives the financial aspect of it.
Sure.
And it's that new innovative thing that, that really excites humanity, that really kind of helps drive the financial aspect of everything.
Let's pause for a moment. What actually brings you joy? It's something most people never think about, yet it shapes how your life unfolds. You're busy. You make responsible choices. You even plan ahead. But have you slowed down long enough to ask if what you're building supports a life you enjoy living? That's the reason I built my YouTube channel, to help you bring more joy to your money journey. Sure, we'll talk about all the essentials, but my real goal is to help you connect your finances with what brings you joy, because money is the tool that funds the moments that matter. If you want to explore that connection more deeply, visit my YouTube channel at Larry Sprung. You've taken, your 2 decades of creative work through Pape Designs and turned it into Gamify Business, which is somewhat of a virtual tavern where creatives who are business owners really, the way you describe it, I think, is they can pull up a stool and learn how to be a great business owner. What was really the motivation for you to turn your experience into support for other creatives? Because a lot of people would have taken their experience and just created something better for themselves per se, but you're really doing that, but you're also taking that experience and turning it into support for other creatives so that they can, fire up their business in a meaningful way as well.
I really have a disdain for the term starving artist. I think that's really what it comes from. I think that ever since the Industrial Revolution, we've had this issue with people being super creative, being told that they can never make it. And the reality is we need all of those creatives to help boost businesses. Because if a business can't design a new product, they're kind of dead in the water. And so creatives are really the ones who really need to be the forefront, but we keep pushing them down, kind of like clergy. You're closer to this enigma of creativity, so therefore you've got to suffer for it. And I'm like, no, it didn't used to be this way. I'm like, Mozart died a multimillionaire. It's like these people didn't suffer for their art. But here we are in this era where we feel like that's the way it's got to be. We've all got to have 2-3 jobs or whatnot. So for me, it was really just, I want to see, I'm an altruistic guy. I'm a Star Trek over Star Wars dude. I love to see the idea of humanity being like this thing that moves forward altruistically. And the world's fighting me a lot on it, but that's really where it comes from. It's like, I think we should elevate so that we can move forward as a species. We can see the better in us. And so the best way to do that is to tell people who are creative that what they're doing is important and needs to be put out there. Now, every creative is not going to change the world, but if we make enough ripples, we all can. And that's really where it comes from.
What about for the creatives who are listening? Like I said, we tend to have a lot of creatives, tend to be in the romance author space, but we have people who are entrepreneurs who are also, I feel, like you said earlier as well, I feel entrepreneurs by their very nature have to be creative, but that doesn't mean that they necessarily have a good handle kind of why you're in business on the business side. So for those creative listeners who have been avoiding doing or looking at or learning the business side of their work, what's the one thing that you would suggest they do today that they, very easy lift. They're done listening to our show today. They turn it off. What's that one thing you feel they could start doing today that would be super impactful to them today and, in a meaningful way going forward?
Don't beige yourself out. And it's a weird thing to like, be the hero of your own adventure, but don't beige yourself out. Don't try to appeal to everybody. We'd love to all be Nike, McDonald's, and Coca-Cola. But the reality is we're not. Okay. We're going to appeal to a very specific set. Once we start to try to appeal to all the people, we start to lose the thing that makes us interesting. And so really hone in on that. The very first thing that I teach all of my clients is that you've got to understand who you are and what your passion is. And if you can't lock in that passion, if you're uncertain, then your business is going to fail. It's because it's going to get beiged out. It's going to be so generic that you're just going to get lost in the masses. And so what you need to do is really understand what your passion is and then latch onto that and then wear that as your armor, wear that as the shield, the sword, the whole 9 yards, and then chase that passion. There are people out there who really love exactly what you're doing. And if you're uncertain how to find those people, look in the mirror because you are your best client. And so if you don't know how to advertise, make something that you would be interested in, those kind of things. And so it's really like dialing in on who you are and following that passion.
All right. And I mean, that's something that I think is a very easy takeaway. You're done listening today, sit down, in a quiet space for a half hour and kind of, flush that out a little bit, really, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, in business, we call it the mission statement.
Right.
We all have that. But the mission statement, we think it has to be this like wordy, like really eloquent and business term dropping kind of thing. But the reality is no. It's like just what's that one thing that you really love to do? Right. That's what I'm trying to get out to people. And that's really all it has to be.
And if you love it, it doesn't feel like work so much, right?
Exactly.
So,
right.
Yeah. Right. One of the things you talk about is the power of bending, not breaking. What do you mean by that when you speak about that power of bending, but not break, or bending, not breaking, I should say?
So bending, not breaking means like a great example is that pop-out furniture that I created earlier. So that was my first business. And when you are rigid in it, I could have literally like dug in my heels and been like, no, this laser die cut paper furniture is my destiny and I'm going to take this to the grave, whatever. But the reality is that guy in the booth next to me was like, now people can do this at home. They don't need you anymore. And if I would have stayed rigid, if I would have I would have broke because what would have happened is technology would have surpassed me and my sales, which did happen, dropped off the planet. And then that business, it would have died if I didn't roll it into another business. So what you do is you see the opportunities in front of you and don't be so rigid in your thinking that this is the way and the only way that it can be. But instead, look at those opportunities that people are coming at you with. Like when I started doing the me's, the next thing that happens, people are like, well, you can make that. Can you make this? Mm-hmm. It's like, sure, I'll figure it out. Bend. And then what happens is you just kind of weave. And that's why my life story looks like a bowl of spaghetti is because I'm constantly taking every opportunity to bend because you never know where those opportunities are going to take you. Some of the best people that I've ever had an opportunity to speak with are not doing what they thought they were going to start out to do. They just kind of followed this path and just kind of went with not the path of least resistance, but the path of most interest. And they just kind of weave around. And then they're not where they thought they would be, but they're loving where they're at. Right. And that's what that's really about. Don't be so rigid that your business collapses underneath your thought that this is how it has to be. Kind of go with the flow, see where it takes you.
Can you bend too much? Like, does there come a point where, you're just constantly adjusting and making changes and you're not really making headway because you keep changing the path to the destination? Can you go too much? Like, is there a happy medium between bending and breaking, so to speak?
Yeah, the way that I think of it is when you bend, it's like a sapling in the wind. Mm-hmm. Now, one thing that we notice is that the sapling is bending all over the place, but the part that's not bending is the roots. And that goes back to the passion. You've got to stay true to the passion of what you want to do. Like for me, I want to make people's stuff, make things that people can't get anywhere else. And that's really the root of what I am. That's my passion that I have. Now, what that product is all over the place. And so the part that you see is bending and bending and bending. But the root system, the passion, the thing that I originally started with, that never leaves. Sure. If you bend too much, you become someone else. And I have a saying that is, everybody's chasing the dragons of fame and fortune, but the only way to catch up to them is to strip away everything that you are. The best way to get fame and fortune is to ride the dragon of passion, and then they will follow behind. Yeah. And that's very much true with the bend, don't break. It's if you strip away everything that you are, you'll eventually become successful, but who are you? Yeah. What's that about? And so if you ride that passion, you get all of that. It's a harder task. Don't get me wrong, but at the end of the day, you are still you at the end of it, and the path just kind of went where it went. But your root system, your passion stayed the same.
Yeah, as you were talking about that, I'm thinking about like Shark Tank, which we've had a lot of Shark Tank, people who've been on Shark Tank as guests on our show. And I think about Kevin O'Leary when he says, listen, this business, take it behind the barn and shoot it. And when I think about that, I think a lot of those people are not bending. They're not seeing what's actually going on. They're just so laser focused on, hey, I got to go from here to there, not realizing that there might be better opportunities left and right, and take that bend approach in order to improve what they're currently doing. And it sounds like it's very kind of similar mindset.
It's a nicer way than saying take it behind the barn and shoot. But it is this. It's the same. It's definitely the same idea.
So, one of the things in doing research about your team, we uncovered that as a child, you decided to go to a year-round school, and there's been a lot of debate about the schooling year-round, and you chose to go year-round. I have to. Why was that something that you decided to do?
I love learning. I mean, that's really what it was. It was self-imposed year-round school for 10 years. So from first grade until almost 11th grade, I went to year-round school. And this is back in the 80s, kids. So it's before there was all these advanced learning programs. Yeah. I was in my 30s when it dawned on me that my mother was enrolling me in summer school for the kids who failed. And so I'd show up on the first day, backpack. I'm all excited. I'm like, hey, let's learn some stuff. Got any homework? I'd love to do it. And these kids are like, shut up, quit being so nerdy. And, but the thing of it is I love to learn. And I think that, everything can be taken away from you. You can lose your house, you can lose your car, you can lose a lot of things in life. But the one thing you can't lose is your education. And as long as you are willing to continue to learn, you've always got opportunities. So even if this business that I'm running right now dissolves tomorrow, I've got enough knowledge to pick myself back up and do something else. And that's really where it came from. So it's just the love of learning.
Right. Yeah. That's so important. Like you said, it's the one thing, or one of very few things that it can't be taken from you. So that's amazing. Paul, it's been a pleasure having you on. And we end each of our shows by asking each of our guests the same final question. We are the Mitlin Money Mindset. We're all about joy, in this conversation about helping creatives and having them understand business and growing as entrepreneurs has brought me and our listeners a lot of joy. But our question for you is, what did you do today that brought you joy and put you in the right mindset for success?
It's always so it's going to be so lame for you guys, but I got a leather press. That's okay. And it sounds so weird, but I make these personalized leather journals for people, and for the longest time I'm hand carving these things, and I finally found a 1930s metal press. Wow. And I've got this job coming up here, and it's an antique. It's rusted to all get out, but it does the job perfectly, and it allows me to be more efficient in my work. And I love new things, new toys, even if it's an old school toy, to be able to use. So that's really the thing. And I've got a day full of working with it. So I'm really looking for it. So that is the thing that filled me with joy, is that this new tool that allows me to do something that will help me become more efficient, make, better use of my time.
Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing that. It would bring me a lot of joy if things, machinery that we were buying today would last almost 100 years, because everything only lasts no more than 10 years these days. So the fact that thing still works almost 100 years old is amazing.
Absolutely.
So Paul, we're going to have all of your information in the show notes, but if people want to learn more about you, more about Gamify Business, what's the easiest and the best place for them to do that?
If you're curious about Gamify Business at all, I'd recommend you take it's a business personality quiz, and it's available at gamifybusiness.com. That's GAMIFY business.com/quiz. Go there and you'll get to learn. You'll get locked into one of 6 different business personalities. And at the end of it, you get a free 11 to 14 page deep dive into your business personality at no cost, no restrictions. You don't have to sign up for anything. I don't even ask you to sign up for a mailing list. It's literally just to get you to understand who you are in business. So that's gamifybusiness.com/quiz.
Awesome. Well, go check that out. See where you fall in that persona. And, it might give you a little insight to help you gamify business and be more successful. So I really appreciate you joining us, Paul, and sharing your story and your time with us. And enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy the leather press.
Thank you so much. I will.
What a powerful reminder from Paul Pape that success doesn't require you to abandon who you are. It requires you to embrace it more fully. Whether you're an artist, entrepreneur, creator, or someone simply trying to build a life that's both meaningful and financially rewarding, Paul showed us that the rules we've inherited aren't always the rules we need to follow. Creativity isn't a liability in business. It may be your greatest advantage. Thank you for joining us on this episode of the Mitlin Money Mindset. And if today's conversation inspired you to think differently about purpose, profit, and the adventure of building a life you love, you're exactly where you belong. Until next time, keep finding joy in the journey, purpose in the process, and confidence in the future you're creating. Paul Pape and all he's up to can be found across most social media platforms. All the contact information needed to find him can be found in the show notes.